Hello, hello. Happy Thursday. Another one. I'm going to say it again. I'm super excited to do this lesson. My mom is here helping, so she helped me pick today's topic because she's also a hormonal Hashimoto's, warrior like us. So I was sitting there and I'm like, I have like three different ideas of what I want to talk about tonight. I know next week's I want to talk about food ick. That was one of the questions that were answered in my Instagram stories. So next week we're going to be tackling food ick. But for today's lesson, I had a few ideas that I was running through and I just felt like mush. And then she said this idea and I was like, bingo. Like I love it. So today we're going to talk about three things that this time of year can affect our bodies that are not food related. And I encourage you guys to ask any questions that you have. And these are only three things, by the way. There are so many other things. I mean, in case any of you don't already know this, but we have very particular bodies. Like we have very complex bodies. So there are tons of things that can affect us. Allergies, dust, there's so much. And then good old stress, that could be like a whole Zoom series. And I think I've done probably a minimum of 10 videos on the subject. So I want you guys to realize that the three I'm going to mention today are three that I don't really talk about all that much. And I wanted it to be very specific to this time of year. So if you have any questions, absolutely feel free to ask. I'm going to open up our chat. Oh, thanks for the hearts, Becca. Okay, so before we get into all the info that I have prepared for you guys, I want to know how you're doing. So tell me in the chat. We did this a couple weeks ago, but what's one thing that you feel really excited about or happy about, and one thing that you're working through? Tell me in the chat. It could be small. It doesn't have to be, you could be like, I stubbed my toe and working through that. Like I don't care what it is, but tell me in the chat one thing that you're really happy, proud of, excited about, anything like that. And then one thing you're working through. Oh no, my water. Forgot my water. And I was gonna apologize if you hear baby in the background. But first, I don't think anyone would be mad at that because I think it's adorable sounding because he doesn't even cry. He makes like the most pitiful little whimpers. But also I have background audio blurring on here. So I don't think you guys can hear it. But if it gets disruptive at all, just tell me. I'll go in the other room. So tell me in the chat one thing you're excited about and one thing you're working through. Okay, Lisa, excited. My daughter is loving her first week of pre-K after being home with me for 3 years. Yay, I know you were so nervous about that. Working through missing my little buddy, aka her, when she's at school and getting used to the daily silence. And you know what? I bet there are times that, not that you aren't like, that you don't absolutely love her, but there's got to have been times where you're like, oh my God, I'm so overstimulated, and now you're like getting adjusted to the silence. Um, that's rough, but I'm glad that she's loving it. And it sounds like you're adjusting really well too. So even though it's something you're working through, it sounds like you're doing it. So awesome. The only thing I can kind of relate to that is when we moved from the north side of the state down a little bit further south, we moved from somewhere that was like 15 minutes out of New York City. So even though it was a quiet block, like one of the most quiet blocks in the town, it was like a constant drone of sound. And then we moved down here because we wanted it to be more quiet. And we sleep with a white noise machine and the air filter going because it's too damn quiet. Getting used to the silence was a lot more jarring than we anticipated. So I also wonder if there's like a neurodivergent component to that. Anyone else? Anyone else want to share with the class? And you can share with me privately if you'd like, if you don't want anyone else to know what you're excited about or what you're working through. And I will not call you out. I will say anonymous. I like doing these. I feel like for every second of awkwardness I have staring at the computer, I'm like it's worth it when I feel like we loosen up, we get chatting. Becca, proud I stood my ground with my kids more. Ooh, I am proud of you for that too. And then working on boyfriend issues. Ooh, I don't envy that. But I'm proud of you for that too. So good job, even though probably doesn't feel great. It's a good job. All right, so if you want to share anybody else, keep it coming. I'm happy to see it. Oh, I have been having horrible fibro flare up and ended up at orthopedic urgent care. Oh, that sucks. I'm so sorry. I think that'll probably have a lot to do with some of the stuff that we're going over tonight too, because a bunch of my fibro clients have been saying, I mean, not just this year, just in the many years that I've been doing this, this is the time of year. I don't know if it's been the same for you in the past, but I notice a lot more fibro flare ups amongst my clients this time of year. I think a lot to do with the reasons that I'm going to go over. But I'm sorry that you're going through that. That sucks. I'm proud of you for taking care of yourself. I know that's really hard. I'm proud of you for showing up to this Zoom despite having to deal with the horrible flare up that you're going through. So, yay, ish, because I wish you weren't going through it. Okay, so let's dive in. If you want to share, send it on over. Okay, so the three things that we're going to go over today. One is barometric pressure. Second one is temperature and humidity. And then the third thing is the difference in sunlight. But yes, I hit record. Nick was reminding me to record. Okay, so barometric pressure. Who here has heard or thought of that before? Where you're like, you know that if it's like a low pressure or high pressure day, you feel it, whether it be with migraines or pain or anything like that. So I'm going to rely heavily on my notes because my brain is pudding. So if you see me looking down awkwardly, that is why. My notes are right here. Face pressure sometimes if the weather changes, for sure. Katrina definitely heard of it. Yeah, sucks. And it really changes this time of year. This is a very volatile time of year. So, and that's across the board. Now, I might have a lot of clients that are tuning in from places that have different climates. You might be like, nothing's really changing here, but no matter what, the pressure changes this time of year, no matter where you are, even if the climate doesn't feel all that different. So Anne said it super affects me, right? Isn't it so fun? So it can impact joint pain and headaches, especially. Lower pressure can cause tissues to expand, which may put pressure on nerves and increase your pain. So what causes this change in barometric pressure? A few things. One, temperature fluctuations. So as seasons transition, temperatures can really vary. And you can have, it can be really hot during the day. It doesn't even have to be that it changes from it being hot in the summer to being cooler now in the fall. It could also be that whereas before it tended to stay warmer, in most places at least, throughout the day and night, now you're seeing a much bigger spread between the temperatures during the day and in the morning, and then throughout, or I'm sorry, overnight and the morning and during the day. So warm and cold air masses have different densities, and that clash of the different densities can really affect our bodies. So colder temperatures can lead to high pressure systems, while warmer temperatures in spring and summer can lead to lower pressure systems. So now you're experiencing a much bigger spread from one to the other, or swing, I should say, in just one day's time. It's bound to make us feel like shit, right? In other words. So wide temperature ranges always make me start to feel sick. Yeah. Our bodies are super sensitive to these things. So if that's all right, if that's making anyone feel like crap, our bodies are going to go nuts with it. So different weather systems like high pressure and low pressure systems move through regions with changing seasons. So clear, stable weather tends to come with high pressure systems, and low pressure systems can bring storms and variable weather with different levels of humidity in the air, which we'll get to. Jet stream shifts. So the jet stream, which is a fast flowing ribbon of air in the atmosphere, that shifts. So with the changing seasons, it's all moving around, right? Its movement influences weather patterns, pressure systems, and contributes to seasonal variations in pressure. And then humidity levels. So humidity, who here feels the difference? Like even in the summertime, right? Like even if you're having a super humid day, or if you're traveling, and you go from a super humid climate to a super dry climate or vice versa, you feel that effect on your body, right? You might feel like you can breathe differently. You might feel more motivated or less motivated, depending. And different people function differently in different climates too. That is a really interesting topic that goes back into genealogy and all of that, which is really interesting. My hair shows the difference immediately. Your hair is a barometer, right? I love I think the only thing I like about humidity is my hair because humid weather gives my hair so much body because it's just, I mean, it's frizz. It's frizz is what it causes, but I'll take it because it's kind of like body. Um, but yeah, for sure. It's the only thing I like about the humidity. I remember one time I went to a convention in Florida in July, and I have never experienced such humidity in my life. Like the walls were all wet and dripping. The walls inside the houses, like I've never, I complain about New Jersey humidity, but that was next level. Every single car's windows were constantly fogged. I was like, my best friend who lives in Florida is like, this is usual. I'm like, I don't know how we both grew up in New Jersey and you can function here. Um, so I would definitely be one of those New Jersey people that travel to Florida in the winter and love it. Summer's not my thing. So every time I fly from Arizona to Washington, that's a big change. My whole body relaxes. Yep. 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 Everybody functions differently depending on the humidity that your body does best in. So, and it's when the seasons change, we have a big shift in that. So I did a little digging for those of us who have hormone imbalance, why the pressure would affect us maybe a little bit more, a little bit further, right? Why we might see an uptick in some of our symptoms. So a few things that came up. Fluid balance. So hormones play a key role in balancing fluids in the body. Who here notices that you tend to swell up when you're in more humid environments? If it's more humid, if it's hotter, you just tend to notice more of that edema in your limbs, like in your lower limbs, like feet, ankles, knees, stuff like that. More pooling of fluid, more pitting. You might even notice it in your face too. Right. So changes in barometric pressure can influence fluid distribution and retention. So changes in pressure can cause you to swell and retain more fluid, which can increase pain, increase pressure. It could cause you to have different skin issues, especially in those having thyroid and adrenal hormone issues. This can exacerbate a lot of symptoms. You'd be really uncomfortable. I mean, I don't know about you, but nothing makes me feel more sluggish and just like I want to bed rot than when I'm swollen. I hate that feeling. I can't wait to not feel swollen, but for a very different, worthwhile reason. So, inflammatory response. So, I always tell you guys if you have systemic inflammation, if you have something like Hashimoto's, that's when Hashimoto's becomes more activated, is when you have inflammation throughout your system. Your immune system is going to be on higher alert and you have an autoimmune issue. So, there you go. It's going to cause that to be more activated. Anytime your immune system is activated, any autoimmune issue will be harder to deal with. So if this time of year, the changes in barometric pressure, if it's causing you to be in more of an inflammatory state, your issues are going to be on high alert. You're going to be a much higher sensitivity. Mood. This time of year, I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is also subjective because I feel like some people I know, some clients I've talked to have like seasonal depression in reverse, where they get seasonal depression it is the summertime and the springtime, and this is like the time they thrive every year mood wise because they love the fall. That's fine too, but I don't know. My mood, regardless of the barometric pressure or friggin' hormones, I'm just a summer person. I love it. I love it. I hate when the leaves leave us and it starts to get dark earlier. But besides that, hormones also regulate our mood, right? So that's going to be affected by the change in pressure if the pressure is affecting our hormones. So, and I'm going to get more into that in a little while, like the specific hormones, I should say. Circulatory changes. So hormones affect our blood circulation and our vascular response. And barometric pressure can change and impact our blood flow. So, and our blood pressure. So if that's more, that might be more pronounced in individuals who have hormone imbalance, because if your blood flow, your blood pressure, all of that is changing, your hormones are going to react to that. All of our excess hormones are carried out through our bloodstream, through our vascular system. So if that's impacted, so is the process of our body utilizing and then getting rid of excess hormones. Thoughts on barometric pressure? You might have heard about it before, but what stands out to you the most hearing all of this and how it applies to you and what you've been experiencing? And again, not just this year, just across the board. This ain't your first fall and winter, right? That we're going into. So does this stuff sound kind of on brand for what you deal with? Nick, can you pass me my water, please? I am parched. Yeah, this time of year is definitely crazier. I mean, and we see it too with clients. Our baby steps need to be tweaked this time of year typically. Those of you who are in KGG, who are, it's our 1 year program, we go over a different protocol for the seasons, or we tend to want to do that, and we vary up your baby steps, or we revisit baby steps a lot of times and the changes of the seasons. We'll go back to the basics. You might notice that we ask you to do more food logs for us, to tell us how you're sleeping, even if you've been with us for years. Yeah, and that's because our bodies are going to be changing this time of year throughout each of the seasons. Ah, my family. What skin hurts? Oh, my mom's saying her skin hurts. Anybody else feel that too? I definitely can. The feeling, the skin on your head, scalp, your scalp might feel different. Skin issues like eczema can be more present. I suck at noticing patterns, so I don't really know. Well, that might be something to look into now too. Maybe set yourself up with like a little bit of a seasonal journal. Save it. I have notes in my phone saved from years ago that have like one, I don't know anyone else. I have like one word at the top and I'm like, what the hell was I writing? But maybe create a note that's like seasonal journal and set an alarm for yourself at like an event in your calendar. Set it to remind you to like the beginning of each season. Just go in there and jot down what you notice. It's kind of cool because I feel like you can look back at it at the end of the year and being like, huh, just compare it. I feel like such a weirdo when my fingers get all swollen during exercise. And it sucks because, like, what do we do? Like, it feels like you feel like I don't know about you, but when my fingers would swell up, you take it as if you've been sitting around eating bonbons all day. And like, how when you're in that negative mind space with our bodies, you're like, you blame yourself for gaining weight. It's like you blame yourself for your swollen fingers, but you're not like, what the hell? Swollen fingers are something so like problematic, but obviously not caused by anything that we're specifically doing. Unless you're eating, friggin' sausage and supersat all day long. Like I could easily do because it's delicious, but anyway, you know, so silly, but I hate swollen fingers for sure. Not being able to put on rings, I feel like bothers me more than not being able to fit into the same pants. So silly. I knew that it affected some things, but I didn't consider hormones or vascular system. It's really cool, right? Especially the processes of carrying out our hormones once we've utilized what we need to utilize. And especially if you have like an androgenic hormone issue, excess androgens is what causes PCOS symptoms to flare. So of course, if you're not expelling those, then they're hanging around. Skin feels warmer, or just when temps change, I feel like I'm more sensitive to temperature for sure. And where do I have that? I have that written in the next excerpt. So for sure, I feel the same. Rosacea flares for sure, in addition to the eczema and stuff like that. I don't know if you noticed at this time of year, if your rosacea is more prominent, but that makes a lot of sense too. So that's barometric pressure. That's definitely something interesting. If you want, we can dive in further in that. Just text me and or text your coach and definitely dive into that on your next session. I love talking about nerdy stuff like that. Okay, second thing, temperature and humidity, right? So cold weather can lead to muscle stiffness and exacerbate symptoms like arthritis. We know that, right? Cold tends to be, you would think like if you ice something, it helps reduce inflammation. So if it's colder out, you might feel better. But I don't know about you guys, as someone who has rheumatoid arthritis, the wintertime, I am definitely more activated. So, but it can also lead to more joint discomfort, especially for those of us who have Hashimoto's. So I wanted to go into this and talk a little bit about temperature issues for those. And if you don't have Hashimoto's, you might still relate to a bunch of the stuff that I'm gonna run through right now. But tell me in the chat what you notice and what you think. Okay. So like I mentioned before, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disorder. So if it's during a time of the year that you have more of an active immune system, which can be because of the allergens in the air, different, I'm going to say pollen, but the like fall allergies, different dusts, different mold from the warmth and the moisture, the temperature difference, the humidity difference, all of that. If you have an activated immune system, any autoimmune is going to be activated. And Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease where your thyroid is attacked. Your immune system attacks your thyroid. So I want to dive a little bit into that and talk about how that affects us specifically. Okay. So Hashimoto's affect our body's ability to regulate our, oh, hi, welcome, Mo. I'm so happy to see you here. Okay, so Hashimoto's affects our body's way of metabolizing. It affects our temperature regulation. So especially throughout this time of year and the change of the seasons, you might notice some stuff like thermoregulation. So you might have some issues regulating your thermal temperature, right? Because an underactive thyroid impairs the body's ability to regulate that. I am always cold. Like the joke is, even in the summertime, I'm not talking about out in the sun. I'm not an absolute mutant. But like if we're anywhere with air conditioning, I'm in a crew neck sweatshirt while Nick is like, he wishes he didn't even have a shirt on and he's like in a tank top and shorts. That's just the running joke. You should see in the car the dials because we have the temperature that's edited, and Nick's will be like the lowest it can go. It'll be like 60 and he's sweating, and mine will be pretty much off and like 72. I might have the butt warmers on. I'm not even kidding. But anyway, I have Hashimoto's, but I'm still always hot and sweaty. And it can go that way too. It's the thermal regulation that has the problem. So it might not be, that's a really big myth that you tend to always run cold. Usually if you have very, very slow thyroid, then that's when you're going to be really, really cold. But even if my levels are completely fine, I'll still be cold, where there will be people who run really hot, even if their levels are completely fine. It's very personal how your temperature is regulated, but Hashimoto's just disrupts that process completely. So you might feel excessively cold, you might feel excessively hot. If you're excessively cold this time of year, it's going to be exacerbated. If you're excessively hot and you're sweating, then that's going to cause an issue because sweating is supposed to cool you down, but it also keeps your levels of moisture and humidity around you higher. It also leads to more dehydration. Sorry, I'm dealing with Temu brain still. So, so that's one way that the thermal regulation affects us. Then there's the metabolic rate. Cold temperatures can exacerbate symptoms of hypothyroidism because the thyroid's already less effective at maintaining our normal metabolic rate. So you might notice that your metabolism is even more skewed this time of year. You might notice that you're getting more cravings. You might have lower energy despite being hungrier. You might feel sluggish after you eat. You might notice differences in your hunger cues throughout the day. So this can lead to, of course, increased fatigue, joint inflammation, and stiffness. And I feel like it's not talked about enough how painful Hashimoto's joint pain actually is, but it's super painful. It causes an inflammation of all the joints in your body, and that's not counting the comorbidities that can come with it. So I don't think that's anything to sneeze at. And this time of year, we already talked about and discussed what could be affecting and causing higher pain, especially joint stiffness and joint swelling. Circulation, like I mentioned before, how it affects your vascular system. So hypothyroidism can affect blood flow and circulation. Cold weather and changes in pressure and temperature can worsen those circulation issues. Energy levels, that's a given. You know, colder temps can tend to cause your body to have to work harder to maintain things. And if you're already operating with a slower system or an overburdened system, and your thyroid is literally attacking itself, then you're going to be facing a lot more fatigue and a lot more fogginess. Any of that stuff sound familiar? Let's see. My stomach just made the weirdest sound, so let's hope background audio blurred that out. Oh, Katrina, you living in Florida. Oh my God, I was such a wimp when I know I told you about my issues with the humidity before, but it just makes me laugh every time I think about my trip there in the summer. I have an issue sleeping when I travel. I just don't really fall asleep, especially the first night. It's very difficult for me to fall asleep. And Nick does not have this issue. He could sleep literally on a rock. He's laughing because like we could be on the most uncomfortable plane ride with the most turbulence in the tightest seats with the most annoying people all around us, and Nick is open mouth sleeping within 15 minutes of takeoff. Not I. All right. But anyway, we went to Florida. It's the middle of the night. I'm awake, wound for sound. And I swear to God, I have never experienced a storm that was literally nothing to anyone else that was so intense in the middle of the night in July. I was texting my best friend whose house we were at in the next room, and I'm like, should we evacuate? Do we need to close the storm shutters? Nick is knocked out next to me, sleeping through it. I slept like away from the window, almost on the floor. It was nothing. It was a summer storm. So that's me in the weather in Florida in the summertime. But it was still beautiful. Like I wish that I wasn't such a wimp, but I always laugh thinking about that story. Because the next day I told her, I'm like, she woke up, she's like, what were those texts last night? Like, are you okay? And I was like, you didn't hear? Like, is your property okay? And she's like, yeah, that's what happens here. So funny. I don't know if I have thyroid stuff yet, but MS damages the coating on my nerves that regulates temperature. Yep. Heat is the worst, but I go from hot to cold, back to hot in seconds. Yep. So that thermal regulation is definitely going to be more intense this time of year, just as your body adjusts to things too. You might not feel the temperature, but the temperature outside changing is also putting your body through a bunch. I was in Miami for 20 years. And I was so used to the humidity that when I moved to the Panhandle and had my first winter, my knuckles cracked. And that's what my best friend said too. She's like, you get so used to it. She's like, I forgot, where did she live? We were in West Palm, I think, when we stayed with her. And she was like, yeah, you just get used to it. Because she grew up like 5 houses away from me, where I grew up here in New Jersey. And then now she's been down there for like 10 years. So her body has adjusted for sure. We definitely joke around about regular Tuesday afternoon tropical storms. I am such a chicken shit with weather though. Like I would be one of those people that would pull over and put my hazards on if it's raining on the highway. I remember we were down there for one of the 3 p.m. like every day showers, and like we are driving super slow. We have the hazards on, the wipers on full blast, and people are just like flying by us. Like we're probably more dangerous driving slow. I was like screaming at Nick. I was like, slow down, you know, not you holding it down for everyone during Hurricane Hillary in San Diego. I hope I did a good job at hiding how nervous I was. Like once it hit, I was like, oh, okay, this is a New Jersey storm. I can tolerate this. But the lead up, I was freaking out inside. So, whew, yeah. So those of you who don't know, I hosted, I the first time I ever visited California ever, I was hosting our CCA retreat out in San Diego at this gorgeous house that we rented in like the hills that were so hard to get to during a legendary storm that was coming. Like, it was supposed to be a massive hurricane. They were like bringing sandbags to the hills, and like stores were boarding shit up, and I'm there with like 10 people from all over the country. I'm like, okay, great. This is great. And then there were tarantulas. Becca wrangled one and saved us all from living in terror the rest of the night. What a time. Anyway, sorry. Veered far left on that one. We should just do a Zoom where it's just like crazy story times. I would love that. Okay. So last topic on here, seasonal sunlight changes. So this is my favorite one to talk about. And this is the biggest reason I get depressed in the fall and the winter. I love it being light out. It being light late, I just adore it. I also think that there is a neurodivergent component to this. I think that it also has to do with time blindness and feeling like you can get more done throughout the day. But we're going to talk about it on a chemical level when it comes to overall having less sunlight. This time of year, if you notice, I don't know, I feel like we had like longer sunsets before, like in the summertime. It feels like it's a slower transition into night. Now it feels like not only does it get dark earlier, but it gets dark quicker, in my opinion. Just might be because I'm salty. But less sunlight affects hormones primarily through its impact on our circadian rhythm and the production of a few really important hormones. So, number one, melatonin. Sunlight helps regulate melatonin, and I think we all know the VIP melatonin that helps control our sleep-wake cycles. So reduced sunlight, especially in the fall and winter, can lead to increased melatonin production, which sounds like a good thing, but might cause more drowsiness and then disrupt actual sleep patterns. So basically, our body recognizes that when it gets darker, that's when it's time to cut back on the normal amount of cortisol we're supposed to have that keeps us awake and functioning. And it ups the production of melatonin, the release of melatonin, which is supposed to help us drift into sleep and wind down and things like that. But if it's getting darker earlier, you're going to have an onset of that switch earlier. And if it's too disrupted, if you push through it, if you're, I mean, who the hell's going to go to bed at? So no judgment if you do, but most of us don't go to bed at like 6:30, 7 o'clock. And when it gets dark in the winter at like 4 o'clock, we're not going to go to bed then. Some of us aren't even out of work yet. So if you're pushing through that, you're having another coffee, you're looking at screens, you're rejecting the fact that you have to go to bed and start work all over again tomorrow. So you're up on your phone really late. Those things are going to mess up that circadian rhythm where your body's trying to figure out when it's supposed to help you go to sleep or not. Good old serotonin. And this is where the seasonal depression aspect kicks in. And again, this isn't everybody. Some people might not experience seasonal depression. Some people really just live their best life in the fall and the winter. And I am jealous. But for those of us who feel that extreme dip in motivation, serotonin is not just really, not responsible for happiness. It's also just responsible for stability a lot of times too, with handling anxiety. With us feeling like we have a more stable way of approaching things rather than the peaks and the valleys. So if you have irregular serotonin because you have less sunlight exposure, then that's going to affect those serotonin levels and increase the chance of having mood issues, especially if you are already diagnosed with a mood disorder. Vitamin D. Gotta get the D. So sunlight helps the body produce vitamin D. It's actually a really cool process. I love learning, I learned about that forever ago. And I feel like there's more and more stuff that's coming out, more research that's done surrounding the benefits of sunlight all the time. So I think it's really important to get as much sunlight as possible, but that's not possible when the sun is already far friggin' away. So even if you are outside in the dead of winter, you're not even getting the right amount of sun. Forget the fact that you're all covered up. if you're in that kind of a climate, but it's also that even if you are outside, even if you are in a tank top and shorts in January, you are by default getting less sunlight because the sun's farther away. And I mean, unless you're tuning in from Australia, or South America, but for those of us here stateside, you're no matter what going to be getting less sunlight, which translates into less vitamin D. And the effects of vitamin D, I could do a whole Zoom on that. If you guys want, let me know, I will. But the side effects of low vitamin D mimic a lot of the symptoms that we experience with various hormonal disorders, as well as Hashimoto's. They're very, very similar. So, I mean, down to even hair texture and hair quality, hair loss, a lot of it can be attributed to low vitamin D. And then I said this before, circadian rhythm. The sunlight helps us manage that sleep-wake cycle. So your daily cortisol, where you're supposed to be releasing cortisol in the morning, having it fluctuate throughout the day, and then having it cut off at night and have your melatonin release, that's not happening as much because the sunlight is affecting that. And modern life is not allowing us to wake and sleep with the sun. Unless you're like Amish, in which case you wouldn't be watching this. So I'm low in vitamin D because of MS, but every doctor I ever had joked that it's just because Chicago. How many months would you say it's like in the Chicago area? How many months would you say you get where it's like really nice and tolerable to be outside? I always wondered that because I know you guys like live for the summer out there. What was it? There was a show. If I vaguely remember a show on Bravo that was dedicated entirely to how people in Chicago go all out in the summertime. Oh man, I forget what that was called. Except it's not actually a joke. We really are low here. What's interesting though, in states like Arizona and in Florida and in Texas and stuff, there's also a lot of people that have low vitamin D counts because it's so freaking hot that people are indoors, avoiding direct sunlight in the high sun, in the months the sun's the closest. I had a client tell me it was like 120 something degrees in Arizona in July. I would quite literally perish. I can't handle that. Even though I love the heat. We start getting above 105 and I don't care how dry it is. It's not okay. So summertime chai, how do you say it? Don't make fun of me. I'm from New Jersey. Is a real thing. I bet. Shy? I had it wrong both ways. Wow. I kept waking up too early and then needing a nap at 7 a.m. Absolutely. We're all kinds of screwed up, right? I'm in Arizona and I had to take vitamin D supplements. And, fun fact too, a lot of people, actually, I talked about this in my stories on Instagram today too, is that different supplements have different bioavailabilities. So don't be surprised if you take supplementation and you still don't see a rise in your vitamin D levels or your symptoms don't get better, because our bodies they react differently with the bioavailability of our supplements. So it could literally be like you're taking something and it's not even being utilized. Okay. So here is how to remedy. I'm going to give you 3 ways to remedy. And then I want you guys to text me or text your coaches and let us know how this stuff pertains to you so we can come up with a specific baby step plan for you guys for the fall. Because everybody watching this is going to be experiencing things more intensely or less intensely, depending on your own composition. Okay. So number 1, this is going to be annoying because every time I was told this, it pissed me off. But trying to get more activity. Now, I'm not saying go run. I'm not saying go lift. I'm not saying any of that. But I'm saying more stretching, more trying to move the limbs, no matter, like, even if it's very little, whatever you can within your threshold without causing yourself freaking physical pain and injury, right? Every little bit counts. So it can be super low impact. In fact, it should be super low impact. It could be stretching at all. It could be, what did I write here? Rotating your limbs, just taking more breaks, to just loosen up a bit, you know, especially those of us with anxiety or us neurodivergents in here, we tend to crunch up and we don't even realize it. So being able to loosen up and stretch and stuff like that, that's going to help improve circulation, which becomes an issue with, like we were saying, with the barometric pressure and all that. So improving your circulation, you can do chair yoga. I had this app, I have to dig it up, where it's all different types of yoga. You can choose if you want to do it in a chair. You can choose the difficulty that you want, the length of the sequence that you do, all of it. And it's just like a little, like a graphic that shows you the movements. I gotta find that app. It was a really good one. And repeated massage, you can massage yourself again to improve circulation. If you have access to an indoor pool, that's excellent. You can do some, I wrote this and I don't even, if you want, my house looks like a bomb hit it. That's why I'm laughing, but some light housework, whatever you can handle, judge it day by day based on your threshold, you know, do some painting or some arts and crafts, standing at your table doing it. I know that sounds weird, but if you distract yourself because you're doing something that's creative and fun, but you're standing up, so you have to literally like lean over more, you're incorporating activity and stretching without feeling like you are. So, and hey, carving pumpkins, right? That might be cheesy to suggest that, but I think it's cute. I don't know. Every year I want to like do those videos where people use power tools to carve out pumpkins, and I chicken out every time. But go for it. Send pics. Tell me about it if you do. Number 2, get outside before it gets cold. Even if you're on TikTok, on your stoop, sit on your front steps, put a leg out, put an ankle out, right? Sit out with your arms like this for a little bit. Don't wear a hat. Like can you guys hear them barking, or is it blurred out? Because hopefully it is. But get outside and just try to get any amount of sunlight you can. I cannot recommend, and this might not be in your budget. This was a Christmas gift that I have used for years now. So the cost per use has definitely worked it out as a good investment, but an indoor tanning lamp. The reason I like those is because they're small. You're not tanning your whole body. You're just standing in front of it for 15 minutes a day. Those of you, it's almost that time of year where you hear the people will be on a call with me and they'll be like, why does it sound like your turn signal has been on forever? Mo, you've been with me long enough. You know, it's almost that time of year. Yeah, exactly. Go get goggles and don't burn your eyeballs like I did one time. So bad. And Nick, just smart ass, just said, don't stand too close and burn yourself either. I always forget, and I will. But anyway, it just gives you a little bit, and I would recommend you get one that has the UV lights in it that is for tanning. Again, they're small. They're not like, you're not like standing in a full body tanning booth, right? It's just to get some of the UV rays, which cause that vitamin D synthesis to happen. They have those other like happy lamps. I think that those could be good maybe for mood uplifting, but that's not going to cause the vitamin D synthesis that you're looking for to help with those symptoms. So I'm a big fan of those. And the worst suggestion, if you have access to a tanning bed, whatever, go there and stick an arm in or something. Like, get the cheapest one you can find, because you're not trying to like tan for the Jersey Shore, right? Like, you just want that UV, a little bit of UV exposure to get that vitamin D synthesis, especially if you're not responding to traditional vitamin D supplementation. And then lastly, hydration. Okay, I have the steps that I give people, the tips for hydration written out here, but we've already gone way over. I think we're at like 45 minutes now, and I don't want to stretch anyone's attention span. I have done posts on this, so I'm going to bump those in the page on Facebook so that you can read over them. I have a whole system for how to improve inflammation. Nick is going to make fun of me for this because he still yells at me to drink water all day, but whatever. But I'm typically really good with as I'm typically better than I was in the past with drinking. I could go all day without drinking anything but a freaking coffee in the morning or like 2 bottles of wine at night. So I'm doing better than that, right? And I have a whole process for this. So I will bump that in the page, but hydration for sure helps. All right, so I'm so happy you guys joined. I hope that this was helpful. Definitely let me know if there's anything here that, is interesting to you or you want to discuss further on a one-on-one. Let me know. Let my dogs are going nuts. Let me know. Enjoy the rest of your night and love y'all. All right. Bye.